Whoa, welcome to Writers Radio. Hey guys, so we're here with an interview. We are interviewing Beth Maliki from the news. She's come in and she's willing to give her time to do an interview. So we're going to ask her a couple questions and have a fun conversation and interview for you guys. So Tatiana's going to ask some of the first questions.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
And the first question that we prepared for you was, how many years have you been working with the news?
So I've been working full-time in TV news since 1999, so that would be 16 years. And then before that, I only worked one day a week at a TV station as a student at the University of Missouri in Columbia. It's sort of a weird setup. The university actually owns a legit TV station, and they staff it with students. So it's pretty cheap to run that station, because the students are paying you to work there.
Yeah.
Their tuition. But it was a great learning experience and gave me the skills I need that when they had a sudden opening for a main anchor position in the evening, their female anchor left unexpectedly and they asked me if I would fill in. And I was just starting my senior year in college. So I'd go to school all day and then I'd go to the station from 3 p.m. until about 11 at night, my whole senior year, and then they just kept me on. So It worked out. I was really tired though.
So with coming and working in this field, I imagine there's obstacles. What obstacles have you had to overcome in your career?
When I first started in TV news, especially as a student, I realized pretty quickly that I did not have the same experiences as my peers. I didn't grow up in a family where they talked about current events. I wasn't exposed to a lot of political conversations. I didn't really understand the difference between a county sheriff and a city police officer. I didn't know hierarchies in business. I didn't understand what the heck Wall Street was doing and what stocks meant. I just was at a deficit of pretty basic facts. And it wasn't that I was a poor student, but they don't teach that stuff in school.
Yeah.
So I had to do a lot of reading of newspapers, magazines, watching news constantly, just to catch up to where my peers were. So that was certainly my first obstacle. And then TV news is a daily grind. I actually compare it to being a classroom teacher. Even if you're having a bad day, even if things are going on in your personal life, you really can't bring it into the workspace. Because people are depending on you and you have to be professional at all times. So that, there have been obstacles there. We've had a lot of change in TV news. 10 years ago, Facebook wasn't a thing. Now, I'm required to update my Facebook page at KCRG weekly, and they really want us to do more than that. So adapting to the changing technology, embracing it, not being afraid of social media, and just kind of going with the flow as things change. That's been hard, but has been necessary. People who refuse to adapt don't make it.
Yeah, definitely.
When you were younger, did you always know that you wanted to be on the news, or did you have a different dream job that you wanted to do?
I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be a teacher from the time I was 5 years old. I think part of me today still wants to be a teacher. I always had a love of reading and writing and speaking. And those were sort of my three things. They will all fall under that communication realm. And everything else to me either bored me, so I didn't work hard at it, which means I wasn't good at it. But those three things, reading, writing, and speaking, I worked really hard at, joined every club, every opportunity for, writing the extra credit or an oral presentation, I signed up first. So I knew I wanted to do something around that, but I wasn't sure what that looked like, and I really didn't figure it out until after my freshman year of college.
Did you have to get any special degrees to become a news anchor? I know with some you have to do this, and you have to get the master's and the bachelor. Was there any, for your position, was there any special ones that you had to get?
You do have to have a 4-year degree.
Okay.
It technically, though, could be in anything. Leisure sports, psychology, pre-med. There's usually not a requirement to work in television news to have a 4-year degree in journalism, but that is what I have. And I don't tell people that they have to get a bachelor's of journalism For me, it really helped. It meant I could get a job on air right away. I mean, I got a job before I graduated. But for other people, the path is more winding. Let's say they get an undergrad in pre-law. Then they realize, oh, I'm kind of interested in this TV thing. They do an internship. Maybe there's year between junior and senior year. Pre-law prepares them so well for reading copy critically
Yeah.
that is a huge advantage in a newsroom. So you don't have to get a certain degree, but you do have to have a 4-year bachelor's degree.
The news has many aspects of, well, we have a sports segment and a talking, and then you guys have like your interview segments. Is that where, if, let's say I have a 4-year degree in maybe psychology, like you said, would I go on one of those segments that has stuff to do with psychology? Or could I go to be a news anchor first?
You would probably go to be a typical local news job, and that would be anchor, reporter, producer. That is the entry-level stuff. And
Okay.
usually anchoring is not entry-level. Usually people start out reporting, and then management says, oh, there's something here that might work on the anchor desk more often. But having a experience in psychology will help you during interviews. For sure. That will give you a keen advantage to understand people's demeanor when they're telling the truth, and then when they're stretching the truth.
Yeah.
What was the best, or what is the best part of like working on the news?
Well, this job lets me go back and do my 3 loves and get paid for it. And that's writing, reading, and speaking. But it is different every day, and that is exciting for me. I might have a touch of ADHD, so this really helps address that and feeds that beast. It also, it matters. I mean, the news we cover at times is fun and upbeat and can make you feel warm and fuzzy inside. A lot of the times, people's lives hang in the balance, literally, professionally, emotionally. So we are tasked, first of all, with developing trust with our viewers so that they turn to us and believe what we're saying. And that means we have to do a lot of legwork to make sure every word that comes out of our mouths is wholly accurate. And that sounds simple, like, oh, just fact check it. You wouldn't believe how many times facts contradict themselves.
Yes.
Or people misinterpret them. There goes back to the pre-law people who are really good at interpreting text. So it's never dull. At the same time, that then can be the great criticism of working in a TV newsroom. It's a pressure cooker. Emotions run high frequently. It can be so stressful, similar to teachers in classrooms, that the stress lingers, and that can be pretty damaging on a person. And we try to be cognizant of our stress levels and do things, have mental health breaks, and make sure we're taking care of ourselves in the industry, because people burn out, and that's not a terrible thing, because that means it's time for you to move on. And then other people turn to substance abuse and have some real problems with alcoholism and other really self-destructive behaviors to try to manage that stress. And
Yeah.
we definitely don't want that.
So your day must be pretty busy. I mean, on the daily basis, you're doing research and writing, like you said. But what does your typical day as a news anchor like?
I don't get into work till 2. So when you students are getting ready, staring at the clock, when is it almost done? I'm staring at the clock going, oh, it's almost time to go in. And I'm there until 11 at night usually. But when I get in at 2, we start with a meeting, and that's with all the producers and the managers. We're talking about which stories we're doing that day. Then we work on writing our updates and promos and radio recordings. We do those. And then we are meeting with producers and reporters, making sure all the stories, that we as anchors understand the stories thoroughly. Bruce Auntie and I have been at the station longer than any of the producers or reporters have been, quite a bit longer. So we have some context. They'll say something like, so there's an update on the flood wall? Like, whoa, yeah, that's the levee. Is that the northwest side, or is that going to be on the other side of the river? No, we were there when it happened. Yeah. So it's up to us to make sure that our stories have context, because most of our viewers have been here a long time too. And then we do the 5 o'clock newscast, little break in between the 5 and 6. I call it the fastest half hour in television, because you only have 30 minutes to go through your 6 p.m. scripts, and it goes quick. Don't ever call me between 5:30 and 6. I will not be nice. And then we do the 6 o'clock newscast, and then we get a dinner break, similar to a lunch break for a typical, first shift 9 to 5er. And then come back and kind of do it again. Do promos, edit scripts, work with producers and reporters to make sure everything has context and is accurate, and then anchor the 10, and then we're pretty much done. In between there, we answer the phones, we talk to the webmaster, we check facts constantly.
Yeah. I know you guys have, like, if you people in the community want to have a story on there, you guys, how do you manage with doing people's suggestions and having those on the show? Because that's one of our struggles that we're having right now.
Oh, that's huge. So we get our story ideas from usually 3 different places. Viewer email and phone calls, so viewer tips. Press releases from politicians, from the sheriff's department, from the school district.
Yeah.
And then a third place I would say is our observation. You're driving down the street, I saw a gentleman once who was using a wheelchair and could not maneuver the crosswalk. And this was a brand new crosswalk. And I said to myself, why would you design a new thing and not have it be accessible to people living with disabilities? That seems totally backwards to where we are as a society. So we called the city, lo and behold, they did it wrong. So that was our, reporter observation turning into a pretty intense story.
Yeah.
We get more than 100 story ideas a day from viewers and through press releases. We only choose about 10.
How do you guys filter through those?
We have some criterion that we as journalists rely on. The big one is it newsworthy? That's probably almost the only one. So what does newsworthy mean? Well, newsworthy is subjective. What's newsworthy to me is not newsworthy to my mother. Certainly not newsworthy to my 8th grade son. So you look at through a few different lenses. One of it, is it new? Is it something that's only happening today? Is it something that is of value? Is it important for people to know that a major thoroughfare through Hiawatha is going to be closed for construction? Probably.
Yeah.
Another question is it interesting? The Kardashians are very interesting. But they don't really pass muster on the question of is it newsworthy and valuable? And then another lens we need to look through, is it fair? We do stories a lot of times that inspire great feelings of anger because we don't show the other side, or people feel like we're not showing the other side. So we really work hard on not just showing the other side. Many stories, most stories have more than 2 sides. They might have 7 sides. So we have to weigh carefully how we approach stories and that we're being as fair and honest as possible. So if something is newsworthy, though, we have heated conversations. That's putting it gently. We have throw-down screaming fights in the newsroom about what is newsworthy and what is not.
Because everyone has a different perspective on it.
Absolutely.
So that makes sense. What were the most eventful or most interesting cases you've worked on? Because you guys have done, like you said, a ton of cases. But what has probably been 1 or 2 that's just stuck out to you?
Sure. Well, I've been at KCRG TV9 for 10 years now. And at my previous job at KOMU TV8 in Columbia, Missouri, all those years combined, the single most impactful story I've ever been a part of by far is the flood of 2008 in Cedar Rapids. And it didn't just impact Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, Cedar Falls, many communities in between. Columbus Junction were hit very hard. So the floods of 2008 were very difficult to cover because they stretched for so many days, and frankly, the story hasn't ended. It's 2015. It was draining, it was scary, it was confusing, and I still don't like watching our coverage from that week in June 2008 because it sucks me right back to those feelings. And I don't feel that way when I think of covering the death of Governor Carnahan in Columbia, Missouri when he was killed suddenly in a plane crash. I feel so sad for his family to this day, but I don't have a physical reaction when I think about it or I go there in my mind. I have a very hard time still managing the memories of the flood of 2008, and I didn't have a drop of water in my house.
So you had an emotional moment. How do you get those kind of, like you said at the beginning, you have to put all those issues. Well, that's probably one of them that you had to bring in, but how did you control, because it's kind of a touching topic to many people here at the school, many people in this area, many people in Cedar Rapids in general. How did you kind of overcome all those?
And I would, to be honest, I don't think I have. I don't think anyone who was as close to the water and felt the impact of it is really over it. And for me, it has helped talking with flood victims. It's helped a couple times a year I get asked to speak to different groups about the flood, and I think that can be therapeutic for me, but I can't spend too much time on it, or else I feel super sad and I start to feel a little bit unhinged. I cannot imagine what the people who actually lost their jobs, their daycare providers, their homes, their school to the flood. I don't know how they are putting one foot in front of the other, but obviously they are.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Having a support system and a downtime regimen is incredibly important, I believe, for people who work in TV news or any sort of stressful job. Really, Kyle, my professor back at Mizzou, made us do this exercise where he wrote down, what do you like to do for fun? And he goes, and don't write party, because you are in college, don't put that down. And I really struggled. Really, all I did for downtime was read. That was my thing. And he goes, that's fine, but you have to have something. You have to have something you can go to that's not work-related, that's just yours, that lets your mind kind of heal. And he was right. And then having supports. I'm very fortunate. I have an awesome husband. He's been around forever. I have great kids. I don't have I have a lot of friends, but I don't get to see them a lot because my schedule is kind of wonky.
Yeah.
But I debrief with my husband daily. And if I did not have him as my listening host, poor guy, I don't know what, I don't think I could stay in this business as long as I have.
Yeah, that's. So you said with your schedule you didn't have time to meet with friends or anything. How did you manage to keep relationships or kind of overcome that schedule change? Because a lot of us have different schedules, or being an option, or we have different schedules we're not able. How do you deal with being in a different setting or schedule than others that you know?
Yeah, it's really hard. And in television news, if you think about, when do people watch TV? It's when they get home from work and school, right?
Yeah.
People don't necessarily watch television at 10 a.m. because a lot of them are doing productive things.
Or-
Yeah, they're gone. So if you go and look at people who work in TV news, very few of them have normal schedules. Most of them work second or third shift. And those who work first shift still don't usually work a typical first shift. So you kind of have to suck it up and accept it if you go into this line of work, that you will not have a traditional schedule. Also, TV news happens on holidays, it happens on weekends, it happens on your birthday, it happens on your parents' anniversary. It does not care what the calendar says. Every day is news day. So I didn't have Thanksgiving with my family the first 5 years I was in the job. It was just an expectation. I anticipate I'm working Memorial Day, whoopity-doo-dah. I mean, I just always work, not always. You know that getting off for holidays is not a given.
Yeah.
So how do you adapt to that? You really need to be aware of it before you go into this line of work. And if it bothers you, you're probably normal. And then you'll do something else as a career. If it doesn't bother you and you can carve out those special times with your family to celebrate and honor holidays and their special milestones, then you figure that out and you make it work. But if it bothers you and there are people in the newsroom who are no longer there, really ate them up that they had to work Christmas. I mean, they just did not move past it. They're not in the job anymore. And that's okay.
Yeah.
So if it's not a good fit, and people joke, or people who are super close to me are like, do you have friends? I'm like, I swear I have friends. I super do have friends. We text and we see each other a couple times a year. And that's really all I have time for. And that's all I make time for, to be honest. Because I also do some work with the Zach Johnson Foundation and Kids on Course, and that's where I spend my mornings. But even if I were not doing that in my mornings, my friends have jobs. So if I want to be like, hey, let's chill at 9:30 a.m., I'd be like, okay, you can watch me type at my desk.
Looking back, is there anything that you would change with growing up and being the way you are today?
Well, that's a small question, not. I did not have a traditional childhood. My parents had me when they were not much older than you. And when I say you, I mean 8th graders. My mom was in 9th grade or 10th grade. So that's a very untraditional upbringing. And with it comes certain challenges, but everybody has challenges, so I don't mean to say mine were more difficult. But it also, I think, allowed me to, even though I grew up, when I was older, I was surrounded by a lot of people who had a lot of privilege. They had, both parents had been married since before they were born, and they had siblings who were successful, and their parents owned companies.
Yeah.
Even though I was around that a lot, I never forgot the people I knew when I was way younger, and they had very few resources, and their parents did not own companies, and some of their parents were in prison. That I was able, and I still today, I understand both worlds, if you will, and that has helped me as a journalist tremendously. Because if you watch the news, a lot of our coverage is about people who have had really hard lives. And to be able to explore that without exploiting it, and to understand it without mocking it, has given me a huge advantage. So of course I look back at my childhood and I'm like, ugh, I wish that had been easier, certain parts of it. But at the same time, it has given me a perspective and an experience that has given me an advantage today. So I guess I wouldn't undo any of that. Oh, I wish I would have done better in math.
Yeah.
Math and I had a big fight in 4th grade, and we just never made up. And that's my fault. I did not power through, and it affects me to this day, and I'm 38 years old. So if I could go back, I would work much harder at math. And but everything else, I think things fell into place the way they were supposed to, even though it didn't feel that way at the time.
So we are all of us are women and girls, and both of us are really interested in this field of study and everything. Do you face any challenges with being a woman being in this study?
In the beginning of my career, 16 years ago, women on television were encouraged to kind of look like men. And you're way too young to remember this, but if you look at pictures of me my first couple years anchoring, I had super short, bullet head, it was terrible hair. But I also wore dark jackets that were buttoned way up high in my bust line, and you really looked mannish. I don't know how else to put it. And then Fox News came on the scene, and girls got real glossy, and you saw a lot of leg, and that changed the game. Now, I think I own 3 blazers. My whole closet is dresses. But this is all superficial. This is all what our society has adjusted, what they watch, what they trust, what they believe. And it really has nothing to do with how I'm treated in the newsroom, how I feel about myself. It's window dressing. I don't feel that my gender, being a woman, has worked against me explicitly. I've never had anybody be like, you can't do that story because you're a woman. But it's been implicit. It's been not obvious. It's when I go into a room with CEOs and I'm doing a business story and my photographer is a man and they'll only look him in the eye. They don't look at me in the eye. It's very subtle, but boy, do you notice it. And I know that women are not alone in experiencing that. People who have accents, people who are not white, people who are obviously not Christian based on either the clothing that they're wearing or a symbol on the necklace, they, through my conversations with them and a little bit of research, often have those same subtle experiences where they're just not treated the same. And it's hard to explain to people who've never dealt with that, because they, are white men who are straight and Protestant. They don't necessarily get it all the time unless they work really hard and listen very carefully to people who are not like them. So I guess I'm really giving a statement on our society today, not so much on me as a female journalist. But one of my mentors who just really welcomed me when I started at KCRG TV9 is Liz Mathis, and she's now a senator. She describes explicit gender treatment that was different when she first started in the business. She was the first evening female anchor at KWWL.
We want to thank you so much for coming in today. We had an amazing time. It was really nice to hear all the stories and how you feel in this. All of us are interested in this, anyone in the radio station. And it was really nice to hear all of it from you and what you've experienced, because it's not an easy field. It's not an easy career, and getting that was awesome. We want to make sure that you guys are still staying tuned for our other shows. We're carrying the 8th grade series for you guys. We're using our Twitter, we're using our YouTube, we're using all of our social medias for you guys. We want to make sure that you guys are staying up those, because we want your ideas on our show like they do on KCRG. Make sure you guys are also watching KCRG so you can see more of Beth Maliki. Thank you so much for coming in. We're going to wrap up, and Tatiana's going to do the closing for us.
And
You are.
really?
Yes. Yes. Okay, I'll do it for her.
Yeah.
This is Writers Radio signing off for the day.